Someone left a link on my channel to a video. There was another link to someone else left, but that's on potentially sovereign citizens or accidentally people not being able to hold their own in a court case because it's difficult to do so. But this is going to be in response to someone leaving a link to a supposed independent science source, literally named Independent Science News. This is like calling your channel Truther, or Christian, or Patriot. It's going to be a Chinese, atheist propaganda page. Because it will be. The link led to conspiracy and pseudoscience website Independent Science News and their YouTube channel. They do not support consensus-based science conclusions. They look for rogue or minority report data. You know, one random guy on the corner saying the end is nigh. Bill Nye. Not those science guy. They use known pseudoscience websites that have also been found to be flawed or just flat out lying. They publish misleading articles occasionally. It's owned and operated by Dr. Jonathan Latham, which is the individuals that was referred to in the YouTube video link. Wilson, and Allison Wilson. These are a husband and wife team that started the Independent Science News through something else they started, Bioscience Research Project, which also is a conspiracy pseudoscience group, and they're the ones running it, and only they had the IP address to go through and edit their Wikipedia page to make them look like a David and Goliath story. If you have to astroturf that hard that you go onto Wikipedia and give a shit that it's got information that isn't accurate, that's amazing. And yeah, they've been banned from editing their own Wikipedia page because they should be. What was this video on? Okay, this is not about the current pandemic. This is about basic science. Just like a mask being worn has an effect, whether you like it or not, whether you think that it's being abused politically, and it is. But it's not being abused politically the way you're told it is. Nobody doing politics is going to tell you the truth about how they're abusing politics, especially if someone else is accused of. They're lying to you. Even if they're accidentally telling you the truth, it's by accident. But masks work for the same reason that wearing a respirator over your mouth works to keep dust out of your mouth, and also keeps you from spreading a disease if you're wearing it while not being exposed to dust and cleaning it, but not spreading disease. Knock down at the source. You know. Instead of wearing, body armor, just pull the bullets out of the gun. And in this case, you're the gun and this is your muffler. But you can say, this is a silencing thing. Obviously it isn't. You're able to scream louder. Every Karen wearing a mask does so. Masks work because they do. It doesn't matter why. I'm not even discussing it anymore. Just shut up. I did an entire set of videos where I explained exactly how they work, and YouTube flagged the shit out of them because YouTube's cuckoo. But is there evidence for a natural origin to viruses in the world? The way I phrased it, obviously, viruses in general come from the world around us. Human beings have not been designing and building viruses since the time of King Tut. That's not how the world works. So that means they have to be naturally occurring. Not if you're a conspiracy theorist, and not if you're a germ theory denialist that keeps insisting that viruses have never been isolated and never been proven to exist. That's cockamamie, but someone out there is going to repeat it. And if you dig at them a little bit, just touch them, poke them once in a while, they'll scream that loud as possible. Because someone didn't discover them in the 1800s. Viruses were not understood or diagnosed or isolated until after 1900 something or whatever. Okay, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means we weren't able to detect them. That's a rational statement. Not allowed. Now, am I saying that Jonathan Latham Wilson and Allison Wilson are germ theory denialists? I don't know or care. They made a video concluding that natural origin of viruses, because viruses can infect you at the same time, or infect an animal at the same time, or a virus can infect two different animals. That combination obviously means that two animals that can have viruses transfer between them could also have more than one virus transfer from this one to this one across, and the viruses could damage each other enough to cause mutation. It's one of the faster ways to create a viral mutation. You call it gain of function. I call that what happened that caused a lot of diseases. Viruses do this because they have a lot of hosts, whether they be bats, humans, or pigs. It doesn't matter. Swine flu, avian flu, bat flu, or just human flus happen because they have a lot of hosts to interact with. If you reduce the number of people infected, they don't mutate as fast. It's that straightforward. It isn't complicated. If you believe that this has to involve some sort of Illuminati conspiracy, you're ignoring millions of years of existence on this. Oh, wait a minute, some of you don't believe the Earth is that old. Well, you know it is, but you don't want to say that because for political reasons, you're going to claim ignorance about biology. Pushing it that far because you don't like wearing a mask and you're a fucking Karen. Yeah, let's get to the point. So what happened in this video? The claim was that there's no evidence for zootonic origin for a specific virus, even though all of them show this. This is literally how almost all of them mutate over time. We just can't detect it all the time. We still can't detect exactly what the middleman animal or critter host, whatever, was for some of the viruses. But we can deduce it pretty easily. It's really obvious where they came from. And that's it. Well, they've never determined it. Well, that's actually not true. But you can keep saying it. Meanwhile, there is no evidence, strong or otherwise, for a lab escape origin when you've got literally bats in the same city as the Wuhan wet market. But the range doesn't go there. The map showing it during one time a year doesn't show it. The rest of the time, it's literally up and above it. And also, well, what about the natural range of, a pangolin or a civet cat or whatever? It's not natural. They were imported illegally. They're smuggled across the border. Somehow viruses are supposed to obey the law. The virus happened because people were importing animals that were exotic to the area into an area with a naturally occurring bat population with a virus that was slightly compatible into animals that were also had viruses that were slightly compatible with each other, and they cross-contaminated each other. A lot of you know about on a farm, if you have a disease attacking one type of animal, you should actually separate them from the others just in case, because they could cross-contaminate. And with viruses, even though they shouldn't be able to, they obviously do because they can get away with it. Viruses do what they do. They don't do what you think they do. And that's the big problem here. That's the conclusion of this. Just because we didn't know viruses existed in 1805 doesn't mean they didn't exist then. Just because we don't know how viruses do this 20 years ago doesn't mean we don't know now. We do. It's really easy. You can get a head cold and have, a bacterial infection. You can have Montezuma's revenge and also have a hay fever. Hay fever is not a disease at this point. But you can get something in your body that causes a reaction while you're having another reaction from another source, whether it be environmental, bacterial, viral, pollen, eating food you're incompatible with because you're allergic to it. And these can all have comorbidities. But when it comes to just viruses, a bat carrying a specific virus that only attacks bats, it can mutate into something that can get into another animal. Well, let's say a pangolin. The pangolin's imported to the area. It's not natural to the area. It's from the Philippines or something. Thailand. And that's literally 80 miles away from the place that they were trafficking them. So that's the most likely place for this shit to happen. And this virus can infect it because it just happens to be able to. And this one's carrying a virus that it can interact with. And those two viruses infect the same cell at the same time, trying to hijack it. And they both kind of succeed. And the cell starts fusing them together, acting like a gene splicer, which is literally what happens. It's not complicated, is it? Is it really that complicated? Oh, no. We have to believe that it happened in a lab with an extremely high protection rating on it. Even though it's bullshit protection, it's a lot better than the unprotected, we'll say, viral interaction. We can't call it unsafe sex. The only form of viral communication between viruses that's almost like sexual reproduction is what happens when when two viruses infect one cell and like each other very, very much and produce something that starts killing everybody. The fact that this thing can transfer to humans, dogs, and cats, and not really back again, but almost, shows the damn thing has adapted to jumping species already. We can see it in live occurrences, unless you believe that it can't possibly get into dogs and cats. But a civet cat, it's actually a civet cat, but it's a civet, it's not really a cat, or bats, or pangolins, that are not natural to the area, that are suddenly in an area with viruses they're not able to deal with, that they can get really infected by. That couldn't possibly happen. None of this natural occurrence could be real. a zootonic natural origin can't happen. Suddenly, that's not a way that you can have viruses happen. I should also point out that it's almost not natural because, again, the pangolins and some of the other animals were illegally smuggled into the area, and they weren't natural to the area. That particular variety wasn't supposed to be in the area. You know, sort of like bringing in, a bunch of animals that start spreading, rabies all over Australia when it's not supposed to be there. Getting it? So when I see a video where basically it's just a couple of people who started a website and a really good dodge to get tax-free money to just keep repeating things that's scientifically inaccurate, and someone points me at a video points me to that video and says, "See," all I see is the same people doing the same thing they've been doing before. Contrarianism sells. You can get more donations if you appear to be being attacked. They've even edited, yes, it was them too. It's not somebody else, it's just these two people. Have edited their Wikipedia page to make it look like they're being, they're a David and Goliath story. It's just two people running a couple of websites, sock puppeting back and forth. It's not a peer-reviewed thing. They reject consensus science. They reject using decent sources. They have misleading articles, maybe just one or two, but that's enough. They don't retract when they get caught making a mistake. They just try to make it to where you don't notice it anymore. And their statement is there's no possibility of it being a natural source. There's no natural history of viruses changing before this year somehow. Just like there's no evidence in the past that masks work, so why did they use them in a hospital? And of course someone will then cat-like type that masks do one thing and we are told another, and that's nice. You keep repeating that from a conservative website that keeps saying that's what was said. It's a straw man argument. So in conclusion, Dr. Jonathan Latham Wilson and Allison Wilson, that they don't really acknowledge, they're the only two people running this show, making an assertion as the Bioscience Research Project or the Independent Science News page is still bullshit. And again, they ignore science. They ignore medicine. They're reckless. Evidence for a zootonic origin is based on the natural history of it happening every fucking time. It's not based on assuming it has to be human intervention because you want to make some sort of ideological or political statement. The location that the current problem one came from just happens to be an area with a wet market, which acts as a petri dish for everything, and literally on the pathway for smuggling in to that location animals that aren't natural to the area and are not able to have a history of defending themselves against the viruses in the area, acting as literally like a gene splicer or almost a sexual reproduction system for viruses. That's what fucking happened. It's not complicated. The entire area around Wuhan and that pathway from various locations smuggling shit across the border is a goddamn time bomb, and it will keep being one until the Chinese government stops shooting their own people long enough to close up the border and stop doing this shit. Just stop it from happening. They're a fucking germ factory. Not a bioweapon factory, not a lab-grown anything. And again, assuming a lab where they're sterilizing everything every damn day and going out of their way to prevent shit from spreading, that's what gets latched onto. Well, it has to have a lab origin. Hell, even the Biden administration has sucked this thing down. They're going down the rabbit hole or sucking it. Doesn't change that it's still bullshit. I'm sorry, but you don't. When you hear hoofbeats, you don't think zebras in North America normally. And this is a pink unicorn zebra here. This is a dumb goddamn thing to bring up. And yeah, YouTube will flag the video eventually. I'm aware of that. Fuck them. So in conclusion, fuck them. And in conclusion, leaving a link to a pseudoscience website under one name that's run by another pseudoscience organization that's really run by just two people, with one of them being interviewed, presenting the same old goddamn argument that says, I'm going to ignore science, or ignore literally human and also biological history on this planet for viruses and bacteria and everything else, and ignore the fact that masks work for all we know next. Doesn't change whether masks work, viruses mutate, and viruses jump from species to species, especially if you provide them an ideal environment. Ask a farmer how they prevent disease transmission. But tell them they're wrong because you want them to be wrong because you need to prove this point, please. Sterilized biolab or an area filled with animals going through that shouldn't be there, that are interacting in a way too close proximity. You decide. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.